All right. Here we go again. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host. Appreciate you riding with us this morning. You know, we've been talking today and all throughout this theme today for the show, which is the fruits of the tree of treason that are being served to us by our government, our legislators, our alleged representatives, our Justice Department, our court system, and the administration and executive power. And one of the topics that we want to talk about is Obamacare, and in its nature, how it is exactly that. I'm going to give you an example. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, the links to the stories that I discuss are in the description section of the show. So drop down that thing where it says show more, and you'll be able to find the links to these articles so you can read them yourselves. I strongly encourage you to do that, by the way. Don't take my word for things, by the way, guys. These are my interpretations and my ideas and opinions based on what I've read. They're my opinions. Don't accept my opinion as your opinion. Be conscientious and formulate your own. You do that by utilizing critical thinking skills and reading all kinds of information, learning and gathering information and resources. When you've gathered enough information to make an informed decision, which can be modified by the addition of new information that comes upon the scene, you will have formulated an opinion that is unshakable and solid through and through, like a shot put, not hollow like a Christmas ball. And when you have formulated your own opinion, you'll know it, and you'll know how and why, because you'll know why you believe what you believe, because you will have read both those things that you agree with and those things which you totally and wholeheartedly disagree with. It's important that you do both, by the way, because you can't formulate an opinion without reading the opposite side and learning the opposite side of the fence of what their positioning is on certain topics or issues. You must know both. You cannot if you don't, you're just singing to the choir, folks. You've got to make sure that you are learning what the opposition has to say as well as those people that you're in agreement with. And never be buffaloed. Never think that, what you read in the papers and in the media is enough. In fact, I strongly encourage you to seek out alternative media, not the mainstream media. There are great places where you can go to get that. TheNewAmerican.com is a great website. There's people that will say, oh, that's those John Birch Society crazies. Well, you can say that, but I tell you what, you read a few articles on that website and tell me that there's not a lot of logic and reason to it. That's one website where you can go. I use them all the time, by the way. I really like that organization. Freedom Outpost is another great site. There are tons and tons of them that I use on a routine basis. A lot of them are posted up on our website, and you can find those resources there. I encourage you to find sources all over the place. You can't just read what the Associated Press and Reuters and Fox News and Communist News Network and all of these organizations out there tell you, because they are the proponents of this propaganda that's being spewed out on America. And, if you're only going to read propaganda sources, you're really never going to be able to formulate an opinion of your own. So I also encourage you to do things like read the Federalist Papers and the Constitution and the Anti-Federalist Papers. Why? Well, the truth is you will understand the nature of treason and tyranny and what our founders were trying to create and guard against only when you read their own words. I think you would be stunned and shocked to hear what our founders actually said. That information is kept from you. It's kept from you because your schools don't teach it. The media never references it. The courts don't reference it. Your legislators don't reference it. I want you to think back, and I want you to listen going forward and ask yourself, have you ever heard a legislator referred to, in all the media pundit discussions they have, and all of the reviews, the interviews they do, have you ever heard one of them ever use the term Federalist Papers? No. Nope, you won't. You know why? Because the Federalist Papers expose them for the tyrants and the elitists and the political class they are. That's why. It's real simple. They don't want you to read that. And the truth of the matter is, anytime somebody doesn't want you to see something, that usually means you ought to. Obamacare is a fruit that hangs from the tree of treason. I started this conversation out in our first segment with, saying I get calls and emails from people who say, you use that word treason a lot. And I do. I use the word tyranny and treason a lot. And the reason for that is because we're living it. And there's plenty of people out there who won't raise these words, but should. In fact, I talked about an article and a video show I did about how the Obamacare, the Obama administration and the Congress in general had changed the Smith Modernization Act of 2012 to eliminate the prohibition that protected you from the onslaught of government-sponsored propaganda. I'm talking about like propaganda like the Nazis used, right? I'm not saying that this is Nazi propaganda. I'm telling you it's ultimately coming to that. But and Joe Kovacs from WorldNet Daily, WND.org, or .com, WND.com, he wrote an article about it. In fact, he put this video right smack dab in the middle of the article. And, one of the things that he pointed out was that, he said Evans is referring to the Smith Modernization Act, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he says here that the online radio host is sounding the alarm over a brand new law he claims grants the federal government massive new powers to saturate Americans with domestic propaganda at user taxpayer expense. Later on, he goes on to say he pulls out the T word, the word treason and tyranny, right? And with all due respect, you know what? We should be using the T word. What we're seeing going on around us, ladies and gentlemen, is the complete. Here's where he says it. He says Evans is even breaking out the T word, calling the measure treason. It is. It is. Look, we can sit here and we can try to be polite society and ignore the elephant standing on our feet, or we can acknowledge what's happening to our nation right now and point to the guilty parties. All of these people in Congress, almost every one of them without exception, there's almost, I'll tell you what, I think I'd be hard-pressed to find 5 out of 535 that I could say I trust. Now, I'll admit, I don't know them all. I can only go by the limited observation abilities I have. But I can tell you this. When you look at people like John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Chuck Schumer, Dianne Feinstein, Barbara Boxer, Harry Reid, John Boehner, these people are operating in open, unabashed, unapologetic treason. The president, in fact, it was out on Drudge Report yesterday. There's an article out there where Cruz has actually stated on television that the president is operating. He is in. It's an abuse of power, is the exact phrase he uses. He's questioned by an interviewer, and the guy says, "Do you think President Obama has been abusing his power?" And Cruz's answer is, I think he has absolutely been abusing his power. And when you have a president who says, regardless of whether Congress acts, I'm going to force my agenda on the American people, that's wrong. That's not consistent with our constitutional protections. I would have taken that a step further and said, not only is he abusing his power, but that abuse of power amounts to an act of treason. John McCain comes out and says, we'll pass this immigration bill once the primaries are over. Really? So what you're acknowledging in public open discourse, Mr. McCain, is that once the primaries are over and there's no more opportunity for an individual to step up and challenge an incumbent, then and only then, when you're safely ensconced in your incumbency, then you're going to pass it. Gee, thanks for informing us. Thanks for tipping the scales. Obamacare is one symptom, but it is still fruit of the tree of treason. It's not a cherry that's small. This thing is the fruit the size of a cantaloupe. It's a cancerous abomination. It is designed and geared not for the delivery as a delivery mechanism for health care in America. First of all, health care is what you get from your doctor. You don't get that from your government. But secondarily, mandating that you have to have, this kind of health care, that kind of health care, irrespective of what your capability is to pay for that, is completely outside the boundaries of any constitutional authority that's been granted to any agency of any government in any state, anywhere, period. They don't have the right to ensure that you engage in commerce in order to remain a citizen in good standing. End of argument. That's it. That's your argument right there. Obamacare is an act of treason because you are forced under police power and the threat of force to act in commerce to retain your good standing as a citizen, to retain your citizenship, period. You can argue with that all you want, but the truth of the matter is you can't change the facts. Those are the facts that are before us. If you want to escape the threat and the power of police force, then you must act in commerce and buy something. It's unheard of. It's unconstitutional. Now, because they can't get this website running and it's been handled in such an inept and incompetent manner, they're talking about, well, maybe we should put this mandate off for a year. I agree. They should put the mandate off indefinitely. End of argument. If you take the mandate away, then it's not coercion leading to treason. Then it's just another offering. Right? It's in the marketplace of ideas. It's in the marketplace of free and open competition. And if the government wanted to engage in true competition, it wouldn't force you to buy from its monopoly. We don't have a free market. We don't have laissez-faire. We don't have capitalism. We don't have anything here except domineering dictatorship by a usurper who demands that we do things his way. And all of it leads to control. It's not about getting you health care. It's not about a delivery mechanism to pay the bills for health care. It's all about gaining control over you. Traction on the slipperiness of American liberty. And the only way that they can achieve that, and by the way, it's a plank of every totalitarianistic thought or principle, whether you talk about socialism, communism, fascism, any ism, totalitarianism requires that you gain control of the national healthcare system of a country, because no one can escape your clutches then. Everyone is touched by it from birth to death. In some way, even if you're a healthy young person, at some point you've got to touch that system. And once you touch that system, you come in contact with the monster. And the monster is ensured that you will have to come in contact with it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what it's about. The second byproduct of that is that they get a chance to fill in the void in your dossier that's being built and designed and collected by the most massive surveillance system the world has ever known, by the NSA and the CIA, on every American and anybody else they can get their little pinkies on. But ultimately, I only care about Americans. The truth is, they are sitting there building dossiers on you by compiling your phone calls, all the phone records, and who you've called, not to mention the content of your phone calls. Don't believe the president when he says, we're not listening to your phone calls. He's right in that. They're not listening. What they do is they convert them to text, and then they scan them with a computer system. So the president is technically correct. Legalistically, he's correct. But you can bet that his speechwriters put an awful lot of mental acrobatics into that to try to figure out how he could say that without being accused of being a liar. So they're not listening to your phone calls. Doesn't mean that they're not absorbing the content of them. So they've got your phone calls. They've got not only your phone calls, but all the metadata surrounding it. So they know who you're talking to, when and where and how and why and under what circumstances, how long, and the content. Then secondarily, they have all of your internet searching. So they know what you read and where you read it and how you read it and who you visit and all of the rest of that. Then they're using your phone as a GPS tracking device, your mobile phone. This particular device here, while you think it's for your convenience, in reality what it is a GPS tracking device for them. Now, they're also capturing all of your financial information with all of your electronic records. So every time you swipe a credit card, every time you swipe your ATM card, every time you go to a store and you pay anything other than cash, it's tracked. Then they're tracking you in major cities and urban areas and suburban areas with camera systems. And all that goes into the fusion systems that belong to the Department of Homeland Security and is incorporated into your file, your dossier. But this area, Obamacare, in concert with that, is like a double barbell, right? It gives them all of the information they're missing. Now it gives them open and even and legal access into all of your tax records. And in addition to that, it gives them open and legal and self-given access into all of your healthcare history, who your doctors are, what kind of medical conditions you have, which tells them an awful lot about you, building a profile. What's your social life like? Have you ever had a sexually transmitted disease? What kind of medical issues do you have? Woo, boy. I mean, you could build a profile that pretty much draws a picture of you, identifiable to virtually anyone who might know you, simply by reading off the litany of things that they know about you. The real goal of Obamacare is not for it to be a delivery mechanism for health care. It is to be a methodology upon where government gains complete control over everyone in the system, and no one can escape its clutches because everyone is touched by it. By the way, one of the other advantages to it is that it enables those who fall up underneath the Medicare, the subsidies, those who are pushed onto the Medicaid rolls, not Medicare, Medicaid, those who are pushed onto the Medicaid rolls as a result of signing up through Obamacare. And by the way, that's the vast majority of people. They're all the Medicaid subsidiary recipients. They don't realize it, but they're falling up underneath Medicaid rules. And that means that in the event you ever have an asset, Medicaid can step in and take that asset and the profits, or the value of that asset to reimburse themselves. It's a secret nobody's talking about. Nobody in the press, nobody in the media, nobody in the Ministry of Propaganda. None of the Congress people. The president's not talking about it. The courts aren't talking about it. I'm telling you, nobody's telling you that what's really happening here is this is a method to strip the equity of all of the assets of the poor. And then it's a means and a method to get to the assets of the middle and lower middle income class. The upper middle income, truthfully, most of them are getting employment from or insurance from their employers that qualifies for Obamacare. And they may have to pay right, and they may have to pay a lot of money, but ultimately it won't strip them of wealth. But it will strip the middle, lower middle, and poor classes of all assets. And that creates what, folks? A caste system. Just like they have in India. Born poor, die poor, no alternative. Can't break the glass ceiling. Listen, this is all about something which is nefarious and dark and evil. And nothing can change that. You can sit there and you can try to paint, this thing to look like something it's not. But no matter, you can take the face of evil and you can paint a clown face on it, but it doesn't make the face behind that mask of paint any less evil. This is evil. I mean, evil in a biblical sense of evil. It is the fruit of treason. The tree is upheld by the courts. The tree is a root of Congress and the administration the executive. The tree is fed by the roots that are underneath the ground called administrative agencies. These are the agencies that create the myriad of rules and regulations that we can't even wend our way through. They're so complicated, they can't even figure them out. The creators can't figure them out. You need a lawyer to guide you through, and even they can't figure it out. And your tax man can't figure it out. These overlapping, all-consuming, integrated rules and regulations. Listen, it's like taking a nice uniform box you get at the grocery store, and it's full of these straight pieces of spaghetti. And you could sit there and you could theoretically count each one out, and it's uniform in size and shape and scope and dimension and depth and everything else. Then you put it in a pot with boiling water, and in a couple of minutes, you've got this lump that's all tied together and twisted. Guess what? The way that this system is now, in order to straighten it out, as deeply as it's been compromised, as deeply as our country has been compromised and our freedom has been stolen from us, would be the equivalent of me saying to you, I want you to take that pot of cooked spaghetti, and I want you to straighten it all out, dry it out, and put it back in the box. How gargantuan a job is that? Now they're talking about extending Obamacare's penalty. I said before, I think they should extend it indefinitely. Guess who's racing up to the lobbying window to scream bloody murder? You guessed it, the insurers. They're saying, we're going to lose money. And Congress is listening. Not to you, to them. The truth is, they know it. In England, and if you want proof of where we're headed here, the future of Obamacare, you know what that is? In England, they just passed a new law. You're not going to believe this one. The UK's top court, this is their Supreme Court, right? They say, and they've passed a new law that says it's okay for hospitals to stop treatment. Britain's highest court has ruled in favor of a hospital that gained court approval to withhold treatment from a terminally ill man despite the man's family's opposition. So there you go. And they're socialists. They're not even fascist. We're fascist. Wait until you see what comes down our pike, folks. Then you got guys like Levin from Michigan. Sandy Levin, they call him. This is a guy who makes this statement, and I'm so angry about it, I'm not even sure how to characterize it, but here's his statement. Those aren't cancellation notices that are being mailed out to millions and millions of Americans. You know what he's calling them? Transitions into Obamacare. Those aren't cancellation notices you're getting. They're transitions into Obamacare. Really? If the companies change the insurance plans, then they have to notify the people who have to have the opportunity to have another policy. And this guy is the ranking member of the House Ways and Means Committee. The guy should be charged with treason, found guilty, as it would be impossible not to find him guilty of, and then he should be penalized to the full extent of the law. It's that simple. You know how our founders did it? When somebody committed an act like that, they would tar them, and they would feather them, and they would run them out of town. Everybody's heard the term tar and feather, but a lot of people don't know what that means. They literally would upend a bucket of tar over you, which had to be hot in order to be liquefied. And they would pour tar over your head. And then they would throw you into a bale of feathers, which of course would stick to the hot tar. And then they would run you out of town on a rail. Ladies and gentlemen, our nation, our national leaders, many of our state governments as well, are operating in unabashed, unchallenged treason. And we Americans are sitting aside saying, well, what can we do? What can we do? Our president lies to us. You can keep your health care. By the way, Steny Hoyer, he's the House Democratic whip, right? He's the highest guy in the House. The whip is the guy who's charged with keeping everybody in line. That's why they call him the whip, right? You know what he admits? He concedes today to reporters that they did know that everybody's insurance was going to be canceled. Because their real goal here, guys, is not Obamacare. It's universal health care with single payer as the government, where there aren't insurance companies involved in this. Same thing they did with the student education loans. Can't get an education loan now from anybody other than the federal government. Any other place, that would be known as nationalization. When you hear the term nationalization, it means the government has taken control of an entire industry and taken it in as a national asset and annexed it to national control. Nationalization is a function of a government operating in totalitarianism. I rest my case. They nationalized the education finance system. They nationalized whole segments of the financial world in the crash of '08 and the automobile industry, and now they're working on health care. America, rise up and speak, even when your voice shakes. Do not tolerate treason. I'm going to post a video up that I want you to see. I'll put a link to it in YouTube for those of you who are catching this on YouTube. It'll be in the section, the comment, or the description section. There's a guy named Larkin Rose who wrote an article about what happens when you shoot a cop. And the national media picked up on it and said, oh, my God, no good, no good, no good. And he reads this article here, and it's a 15-minute video, but it's definitely worth your while to watch. Because he reads through this list of our founders and what they had to say about people in authority and what your duty and your obligation is when they act against the best interests of the government, which they are elected to represent. I encourage you to watch it. It's worthwhile. Hear what our founder said about what we should do when we encounter treason and tyranny. It's a worthwhile exercise in critical thinking. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael. I'm your host here every day. Please feel free to join us. Share our videos with your friends. Share our stories and our articles that we post up on our website and on Facebook. Hey, listen, all we can do is work together to try to educate as many folks as possible so that we have an opportunity to work collectively as a grassroots organization to defend our nation, to chop down the tree of treason and replant the tree of liberty, the tree of freedom. Find us at americasvoicenow.org, youtube.com/americasvoicenow, and Facebook.com/americasvoicenow. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning.